This is Wildcat Country.
It's only right. The ball's in his hands. A milestone victory for Arizona. Simon says championship.
All the inside scoop on U of A athletics.
It's up for the end zone. Arizona has scored the touchdown. Wildcats win.
Let's go to work, fella.
Welcome to another edition of Wildcat Country. Eric Cohen and Shane Dale. It is a huge week, bigger than I think Shane or I could have reasonably expected. Not only is it Territorial Cup week, and yes, I have to hold up Shane's latest book, Rich Rod versus Graham, before he's talking. So
that's
like
okay.
that.
I plugged it too. I plugged it too on Twitter,
okay.
So it's fine. This week is fine. It's fine.
Yeah,
it's appropriate this week.
This is the week to do it. You've written 2 books about the Territorial Cup. If there's anybody that knows more than you about this rivalry, I'd be darned to find him. So we will get some more of your tidbits later on, but we want to start with basketball. Now, the women's team is now in the top 10 at number 9. Very, very impressive. But the men's team. Now, I thought, Shane, that they would, get to the top 25 at some point, but I didn't think they would get there this quickly. So let's lead into this first segment of Buy or Sell with this first question. Based on what we saw on Sunday night, Arizona's dominant win over Michigan, it shows that Arizona, in my opinion, is a legitimate top 15 contender going forward. Are you buying or selling that take?
I will begrudgingly buy. And the reason I say begrudgingly is I don't know how good Michigan is. They lost to Seton Hall a few days before they played Arizona. And I mentioned last week, after the women beat number 6 Louisville, early in the football season, we all thought UCLA beating LSU was a huge win. And we thought UCLA has arrived. They're a national contender, et cetera. Turns out LSU is not that good. So we have to wait and see. With that said, I'm very impressed with how Arizona bounced back from what was a unnecessarily difficult game against Wichita State and beat Michigan despite only going 4 of 21 from a 3-point range. I think they went less than 20% for the tournament from 3-point range. They limited the turnovers. Christian Coloco, Pac-12 player of the week, can't say enough about him. I mean, he's, you throw him along with Tubelis and Matherin, who are probably first team all Pac-12 guys, Kirk Reese's maturation. And you remember we said with Matt Mielbach, we said, we guess how many 20-point scores will we have this year? How many different guys that score 20 points? We're already halfway to what I guess, which is 6. Now, those are probably the 3 obvious, Tubelis, Matherin, and Coloco. But this team turns out it's quite a bit deeper than the rest. I'm going to throw something back to you, though, because someone asked on Twitter earlier this week, noted Sean Miller or suggested maybe Sean Miller was not great at developing big men. And here you have Christian Coloco, who, all of a sudden, would he be doing this? Sean Miller was still the head coach. I don't know, but what are your thoughts on that, Eric?
Yeah, I'm not gonna. Boy, that's a tough one, Shane. I mean, you look at Derek Williams, who can be considered a big man. It's Sean Miller's second year, and he won the College Player of the Year, or was right up there for College Player of the Year. Yeah. So, I'm hesitant to say that. But I don't think players developed as much under Sean Miller as we had hoped. Look at a guy like Alonzo Trier, who we thought by his senior year would be a star. And he was a good college player, and he had a few good times in the pros, but he was never the star that we all thought. So I think in general, Sean Miller's player development was a little suspect. Now, we dove into the Wichita State game. We dove into the Washington State football game on Friday night with Matt Mielbach and Barrett Baker. And if you have a chance and of our Twitter, which is @CatCountryAZ, go back, take a look at that. We did not put that up in podcast form, but go take a look at the Twitter. We had a great time doing that live video for about a half an hour. So go take a look if you want to hear our insight and just thoughts. But then again, I mean, with what we saw on Sunday from Arizona, all of that dare I say, hesitation that we had on Friday night was kind of taken away with that blowout victory over Michigan on Sunday night. All right, the second basketball topic today. Tommy Lloyd is a better in-game coach than Sean Miller from what we've seen thus far. Are you buying or selling that take?
Oh, gosh, it's so early in his tenure. I guess if I had to buy or sell, if I had to do one or the other and not just pass on it, I won't pass. I will go ahead and buy it. I think Tommy Lloyd's game is better suited for today's NCAA basketball.
Okay.
I think now I do have a concern longer term about the defense in that situation because, Gonzaga got rolled against Baylor in the NCAA championship game. I know he wasn't the coach, but he was there. He was part of the system. But Arizona's defenses look fantastic. Their offense and their defense both look better than they did last season. And they're doing that with, you could argue, with less than they had last season. So I hate, you put me in a corner with these questions, Eric, because they're so early, and I don't want to overreact to just a couple games. But if I had to go with one or the other at this moment, I think it would be hard not to say that I would buy it.
Well, an 80 to 62 win over Michigan. It's really hard. And Michigan was ranked, as you said, in the top 5 before their loss to Seton Hall at home early last week. It was they lost by like 1. I mean, that Michigan is a good team. Michigan will be probably a top 5 or 6 seed in the NCAA tournament. And Arizona dismantled them. So it's hard not to like what Tommy Lloyd is doing. We were a little concerned on Friday night in our post-game live stream about Tommy Lloyd's coaching. But, he has certainly bounced back. And, honestly, there's a lot of great things that Tommy Lloyd is doing. That style of play is just phenomenal to watch. So a lot to like with what he has done thus far. Okay, last basketball topic from in Buy or Sell. Arizona will have 2 or more players on the all Pac-12 team at the end of the season. Buying or selling that?
Easiest buy so far.
Really?
Yeah. Two or more, yeah. I think Tubelis and Matherin will be there. Koloko might be. I don't know about Kirk Creasy. He might be a second team guy. But, yeah, I think between the 3 of them, you have 2 for sure. Yeah, I think that the Pac-12 is not that deep. It hasn't been in a long time. You have a handful of good teams. Oregon got rolled by was it BYU last week, so I'm not sure about them. Washington State looks decent to start the year. But how many stars are in this conference? Are there 10 players better than those 3 guys right now? I don't know. So I put it this way. It's easier than your previous 2 questions. I'm definitely buying that one.
Okay. All right. Well, Shane, I was so excited to get into the show that I neglected to mention our great sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com. We'll talk about them more later in the show. But now it's time to transition to the football part of Buy or Sell. And we know that the Wildcats lost 44-18 to Washington State last Friday. But as you and I talked about last week, we really didn't care. I mean, for the most part, what happened what was going to happen in that game. It's all about what happens this weekend. But unfortunately, it's Arizona, and it can't be a drama-free week, especially before ASU. There has to be some kind of news, and This time there was. And Don Brown, who you and I think has done a fantastic job as the defensive coordinator, is leaving Arizona to go to UMass, where he has coached before, and he has his family up in the Boston area. UMass is a train wreck, makes Arizona look like a 10-win team, and so good for him. But Arizona is now losing their defensive coordinator after the ASU game. My question in Buy or Sell to you is, do you believe that his departure will negatively impact Jedd Fisch and the program's trajectory for at least the next year?
That's another easy buy. Of course it will. There's no way that it couldn't. The guys are lining up to play for Don Brown, who ordinarily wouldn't come to a school like Arizona, especially with its struggles. He opened up so many doors to the other side of the country, to the Northeast. We talked about it before the season with Adam Gorney and Matt Moreno from Rivals. They talked about how many more doors are open with Don Brown and being able to coach that in the New England part of the country. Arizona never would have gotten some of those guys. So yeah, it's impossible that it's not going to negatively impact them. Look, Don Brown was never going to stay at Arizona long. Of all the assistants that Jedd Fisch had, it was Don Brown was going to leave, and whether it was for another head coaching gig or as an assistant that could offer him more money closer to home. That was always going to happen. I think we all hoped he would at least stick around for a couple of years to really get this program off the ground, maybe at least get him back to relevance before he bolted. So yeah, that's a tough loss. There's no 2 ways around it. I am confident enough because Jedd Fisch put together a great staff, and our opinion about Jedd Fisch, which was very low when he was hired, began to gradually change thanks in part to the coaching staff he put together, including Don Brown. And he seemed very confident in his press conference on Monday that he said, I got all kinds of, he basically was like, dude, I got connections. I'll find another good coordinator. I think he will. I would like him to find someone preferably who's looking at this as a destination job, maybe a position coach, either in college or at the NFL level, or a defensive coordinator from a smaller school. That's fine too. But someone who is looking at this as a place they can hang their hat for at least a few years, as opposed to Don Brown, which, the downside to Arizona getting a coach like him is, he's going to be looking to leave when he gets the opportunity.
Correct. Speaking of our guests on the show, because I haven't even introduced them.
You're really off your game tonight.
I am. It's Thanksgiving week, and I am off my game. John Fina, our old buddy, former NFL offensive lineman, and of course Wildcat alum, is going to join us in the next segment to talk about his ASU memories, his thoughts on the team, and going forward.
Hopefully not about the Bills, though. His Bills are in trouble.
Yeah, not playing so well right now. And of course Blair Willis, who used to work as with the football team in the communications side, going to give us some Territorial Cup memories. Shane will give us some Territorial Cup facts, and we'll make some picks in the last segment of the show. But my thoughts on Don Brown. I actually am going to sell this theory that it's going to hurt Arizona long term. Okay. Shane, this is a 1-10 team, and I appreciate what Don Brown has done with not the best of defensive talent. But you're going to be able to improve, you would think, on 1-10. So whoever you bring in, and we've seen some bad defensive coordinators, no offense to Jeff Castile, but he wasn't very good with Rich Rod, and they still found a way to improve record-wise. Don Brown seemed a great soundbite, nice hire for Jedfish in year one. I don't think his departure will affect Arizona much at all long term. I really don't. I mean, if they had won 7 games, I would have said, yep. 1-10, Shane.
Well, if you're looking at it this way, are they capable of going 1-11 next year without Don Brown? Yes, they're capable of going 1-11 next year without Don Brown.
Yes. But I'm also not going to, overreact to his departure. Good for him for going, probably his last job at UMass. But Jedfish will rebound. I'm gonna believe. I think number one though is we want to see what happens this weekend. So in the last buy or sell is very simple, Shane. Arizona has the potential to beat ASU this weekend. Buy or sell?
You asked me the same question last week. I'll give you the same answer. Yes, absolutely, they can. And I'll give you the same rationale. If it comes down to effort, Arizona wins. I don't know if you caught some of the ASU Oregon State game.
I did.
And I think ASU fans have been talking about this for a while, but I hadn't really noticed. I haven't watched a lot of ASU football. I've watched some more recently. Jaden Daniels' body language sucks.
Yeah,
I'm not sure what's happened to him. I mean, he looked like he was on the path to becoming a star at ASU and maybe even an NFL player. Maybe he will be an NFL player, but I feel like he has the same expression on his face no matter what happens. He throws a touchdown, he's got a smile on his face. He throws a pick, he's got a smile on his face. Doesn't really seem to matter. And I think that attitude is kind of percolated down to the rest of the team. And I think, I don't know if this team, I wouldn't say they're checked out or they quit. I mean, there was speculation they quit on Herm Edwards after they lost to Washington State. They came back and won 2 games in a row. So I think that, again, if it comes down to raw talent, ASU rolls. Not 70-7, but they roll in this game. Maybe they cover the 20.5 point spread. But Arizona, they're going to come out fired up. It's not going to be like last year where I think this team went downhill. I think Jedfish is going to do everything he can to keep these guys focused, really make this look like this is their bowl game, because it really is. And if Arizona smacks ASU in the mouth early, maybe it gets a pick 6 or a punt return for a block punt or something like that, that could maybe set the tone, because imagine all of a sudden, ASU comes out fired up. They're the better team. And all of a sudden they look up at the scoreboard and it's 14-0 Arizona. Not saying that's going to happen, but if it does, that's something that can change the entire complexion of the team, raise the confidence of Arizona through the roof. And like Jacob Alsadek told me in the most recent book that I wrote, what's the word I'm looking for? The momentum. I couldn't think of it for the life of me. Momentum really matters in football. You remember in 2017, Arizona was up 10 at halftime. Clolte goes out. It's an interception, a big punt return or punt block, whatever. And all of a sudden, before you bat an eye, ASU's ahead. And so momentum just completely changed. And if Arizona is able to get to grasp that early, absolutely they can win. We're going to get to our picks later. Again, if it comes down to talent, no question, ASU rolls. But stranger things have happened in this rivalry. I think it would be the biggest upset since at least 2004. But are they capable of? That's your question. Am I buying or selling it? Absolutely, I'm buying.
Oh, Shane, this would be way bigger than 04. I mean, 04, that was a good ASU team. This would be the biggest upset in my 20 years of going to the game. That's for sure. You're talking about a team that's coming off a 70-7 loss last year to relatively the same team. It's a 1-10 team with a new coach and a defensive coordinator that's leaving, that is on its third quarterback and has been thinned out. I almost want to sell the fact that Arizona can beat ASU, but I can't, just because I would be a sellout against my team for not believing they have a chance. This Arizona team is playing hard. If they had quit like we saw last year, you and I should have known better when making last year's picks. I think I picked Arizona to win. I mean, there was a team that had basically given up. In this case, completely different story. And they're playing hard. They're just not very good. I mean, Washington State pounded them. Washington State is playing hard. We appreciate that. I think ASU the key for me, and I said this last week, if ASU loses to Oregon State, that momentum on their side is gone. And so you're looking at a flat ASU team with no chance to win the Pac-12 South now that Oregon got pasted by Utah. So
keep this in mind, though, that the ASU laid an egg against, I believe it was UCLA the week before they played Arizona last year, and they came out and just rolled the Wildcats. So I don't know how. They only
played like 3 games last year.
I know, but I'm just saying I don't know how much the previous week's results matter. I mean, Arizona in 2013 had that big upset win over Oregon. Today we're recording this. It's actually the 8-year anniversary of that game, where BJ Denker and the Wildcats just destroyed a very, very good Oregon team in Tucson. The following week, ASU beat Arizona 58-21. So I don't know how much the previous week's result matters.
Well, it's, I hope at this point, Shane, that it does matter that ASU, is not psyched up for this game. And the Jed Fish, Chuck Cecil, Ricky Hunley, they give them the right pep talks. Those guys are ready to go. And, we see something. But we're going to talk to John Fina, get his thoughts, and find out if Arizona has a chance to win. And then we'll be back in the third segment with Blair Willis to make some picks here on Wildcat Country, powered by Backcourt Marketing. We are very pleased to be joined by Arizona Hall of Famer and legend. I mean, listen, look at those. If you have the video component here, you can see those helmets behind him. John Fina is just that. He's a legend, an Arizona legend, and Buffalo Bills fans like him a lot too. And his son, Bruno, plays at UCLA as well, so those fans probably like him as well. Always glad to have you here. And we want to talk about the rivalry. And, obviously it's ASU, it's Arizona. This is kind of a weird question to start with, but I'm going to go with it. What's the dirtiest thing that you saw on the field in the rivalry games you played in?
Pants. Yeah, dirty pants, playing on grass.
I think Eric was talking about a different kind of dirty.
Oh,
I think you know that too.
Oh, yeah, I might know that. I'm just playing. No, honestly, for all the hype, for all the excitement, nothing stands out. I mean, they played pretty clean. I mean, you certainly didn't want to get into a situation where everybody was so amped up you did something stupid and hurt your team, right? I mean, second guy always gets caught, so there might have been some baiting here and there, but nothing really comes to mind. I mean, I guess the worst thing was my senior year, we just got clobbered. They probably could have pumped the brakes, but they didn't. So just like UCLA ran up the score on USC this weekend, and I asked my son why, and he said, apparently 5 years ago, USC rammed it at UCLA when they were winning 50-0 or something. So nothing really. I mean, the fans, I think, get really excited about it. The student body, of course, the community. But by and large, I think what I experienced was pretty clean play.
John, first of all, for those who are watching, the further back you sit, the more we can see that Sparky logo behind you. So you might want to just lean forward for the rest of the interview.
So listen, this is a nod to my daughter. She goes to ASU.
I know.
Right? So
I know. But this is UA podcast.
There, I block it. She said, "But Dad, it's right behind you." And I said, "Exactly."
So you got a taste of that of the US. I mean, you've gotten multiple tastes of the UCLA USC rivalry now. And by the way, Jed Fish mentioned that ASU running up the score last year, passing on fourth down when they were up 63-7. So it's not unique to this. Are there any similarities between that rivalry in LA, where they're even in closer proximity to each other, where your son Bruno plays, to the ASU U of A rivalry?
Oh, I think so. It might be a little bit more heated down here. We walked the campus, and they have an enormous monument of a Bruin, a bear. And during USC week, they encapsulate it in fencing, so you can't paint it or mar it in any way. The student body definitely gets amped up. We walked through the SC campus to get to the stadium, and fans were everywhere. It was going nuts. There were a few UCLA fans tailgating, but generally the rapport between them was respectful.
I want to talk about a game you didn't play in, but a game you called on TV. And the last game that Arizona beat ASU in Tempe was 2011. And that was also a big upset. Mike Stoops had been fired halfway through the season. Arizona, I think, had won 2 games, were 2-8 going into that game. And ASU was clearly the better team on paper and in record. And Arizona found a way to win. They rallied, they scored a couple touchdowns late. You were on the call, I believe, with Tom Leander and Adam Archuleta.
Yes.
What do you remember about that game? And are there any similarities maybe between the field to that game and the field to this one going in?
No. Yes and no. I do remember, and it was incredibly exciting. It was like, holy cow. Just when you thought it was over, all of a sudden Arizona, a little bit of luck, a little bit of skill, a little bit of bumbling by the Scum Devils, and lo and behold. But my payback on that, because Adam's a good guy, and we're not, we don't sling epithets at each other about the schools and this and that. But what I did is I forced him to describe, because we were a 2-man analyst team. I made him describe the great plays by Arizona rather than me taking it. So, you take turns. I'm like, Adam, why don't you tell us what happened here? So he was forced to, give credit. And it was all tongue in cheek. The second part of your question where I said no, what was that?
Any similarities between ASU's obviously like the better team. No,
we're in a really kind of challenging spot right now. I still think that Arizona team was still sailing a little bit on some pretty good coaching from Stoops, and I think they'd had some winning seasons. Right now, we're in a situation where some of the oldest guys in our team haven't won a game or more than 3 or 4 games. So it's a complete reversal. Now, that doesn't mean we can't win this game, but no, in order to win, Arizona has to start fast and make some huge plays. And that's it. If they let it go close for too long, I think Jaden Daniels, although he's been in a slump recently, I think he wakes up. It's just like when he played at UCLA, he looked like an NFL quarterback. He was making throws, he was making great decisions, and that was his home. Now, when you playing in your home against your biggest rival, he'll be up for that game. So I can't really say let them linger, but they got to get ahead convincingly, because if it's close, I think it's going to be 10%.
John, are you pleased with the effort from the kids under Jed Fish this season? I know the record obviously is not very good, to say the least, but are you pleased with what you're seeing as far as the talent or the lack of talent, let's say, on the roster, guys just at least playing hard?
I love you said not very good. It's a horrible record, and that's no indication.
Eric likes to understate things, just so you know.
Yeah, right. Sheesh. The Grand Canyon, look at that. Is that a pothole? Look, I don't like commenting on the talent level of kids, right? Because they're kids. And what I do like, the first part of your question is, I just want guys with great effort. We're in a real S storm right now, but that doesn't mean you give up. And I think what I've seen out there, by and large, at every position, are guys that have pride, that want to compete. And we're just not there. We're just not there. And even if we had the best coaching staff, the best players, you're still talking about a transition. And this is the way you used to do it. We don't do that anymore. So cleanse all of that out of your brain. This is how we do it now. And that can sometimes be a challenge too. So we're not in the best of position in any 3 of those departments, right? You're making a big change. You got new coaches, and you got players who just haven't experienced a lot of winning. I like Jen. I don't think that your head coach has to be some genius offensive mind or defensive mind. I think they have to be incredibly organized. I think they have to understand what their defensive and offensive coordinators are doing, and they have to be a conductor. They don't have to be first violin. but they have to conduct and they have to make the big calls and they have to say it's on me when they don't come up right. I think Jed's good at that. And what I love is, he's taking the gimme punts, right? This is Tucson. We want to love our coach. We want our coach to love us. We want him in the community. He's done more for our social media and I think the fans as far as being available to former players than, any coach we've had in the past probably 15 years, right?
There have been so many examples of, winning this game is like a Band-Aid on a bad season. I think sometimes, I learned about this a little bit in putting my book together, that sometimes it could be sort of a launch pad, like winning this game, even if you have a down year, it can be sort of a launch pad to the following year, in spring practice and going into the following season. In your experience, is there any truth to that? Winning this game can sort of help like get you even a little more prepared for the following season?
Yeah, 100%. Leaving the last game of the season with a victory is incredibly important. There are guys who are probably thinking about the transfer portal, or you want something to hang on to, something to grasp at, and even short of a win, if we bring it down to the wire, or we lose by just as few as 10, but look good doing it, I think that bodes well. And belief is hard, trust is hard. For a group that's had kind of staff that they had previously from the top, really. I can't speak to the assistants. And then just coming in off of what they went through last year. So any modicum of success, I think, will be a good omen for the next season. And if we can keep some of these recruits, aren't you excited about some of the guys we've got?
Absolutely.
I really think they've done a hell of a job on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, and that's going to actually be my last question for you, because we have Don Brown leaving after one season to go back home to UMass. Are you confident, just knowing Jed Fish as you've gotten to know him a little bit over these last few months, that he'll be able to put someone else in Don Brown's place that will help keep that recruiting momentum going?
Let's go with Antonio Pierce. Let's pull him away from ASU. People keep talking about the challenges with the investigation. Really, come on. It's not like they're enacting legislation. Let's go investigate Congress and get the handcuffs out.
Are you not convinced, John? Are you not convinced that Antonio Pierce was a mole this entire time on behalf of Arizona?
That's a great rumor or theory.
I think it's worth exploring, don't you?
Look, I'd love to have him back. You know what? And let's say he did something improper. I forgive you. What the hell?
Wow.
It's football. For God's sakes, we're not curing cancer here. We're not feeding the world. We're not talking about legislation that adversely affects millions of people for a kickback for some senator or representative. It's football. Hire Antonio Pierce. Am I confident Jed will get somebody? Yeah, I am. I think he's done a thoughtful job building his staff. It's hard to say that's reflected in the wins and losses, because there's more of the losses. Which one's the L? I don't know much. But I think somebody's going to want to come to the desert. Somebody's going to want to have a program that they can put their mark on, where I think they get a lot of latitude about leading the defense and having it be theirs, right? I don't feel like Jed has been onerous on Don. Like, Don's not running away, is he?
Mm-mm.
He's just this kind of a dream job to come back.
Sure.
Being the winningest 5-year run coach in UMass history. That wasn't easy to say. I just want to know, does Don need an offensive line coach? Man, I can take the beautiful fall weather there right now. I'm in.
Whoa, we're breaking stories here on Wildcat Country. All right, my last one for you, John.
Go ahead, ask it.
All right, I'm putting you on the spot. Which has a better chance of happening? The Buffalo Bills winning the Super Bowl or Arizona beating ASU this weekend?
That's a really crappy thing to say to me.
It's a legitimate question.
Hey, John, my sister's the biggest Bills fan. The Bills are my second favorite team, so I want.
Like, how big?
Well, I don't want to go there, but no, she is a fantastic Bills fan, and she's put up with. The story with.
How did she come to be a Bills fan?
My family's from Western New York. My dad's side of the family is all from Western New York.
And it took you this long to tell me, right?
I snuck it in at the end.
Up to your sister there. I think that's Western New York whereabouts.
They're from she was born in Canandaigua, a little small town at Canandaigua. I had an uncle.
Rochester.
Yeah, I had an uncle lived in Attica. Another one that lived in Watertown. So all over that part of the state. Yeah,
great area. That's a hard question to answer. I mean, look, I'm going to try to rationalize my decision. The playoffs, you got to get through 3 or 4 games to win the big one. You got to get through 4 or 3, depending on your seeding. And that's super, super hard. So I think the odds favor the Wildcats winning. Just be the odds makers alone, right? I don't know. Call the Vegas guys. Was there another question that you wanted to ask?
Yeah. So Bills and no, I just Bills and or U of A. Okay, that's fair.
We got it. It's like it's one game versus several games. I think is what John said.
If I were to make a pick on that question, and I hate to say this, I would probably pick the Bills.
Really?
And
the last game. Well,
I did.
It was bad.
It was a dumpster fire.
It was bad. Last couple have been bad.
But the
last game I left at halftime and I started doing my crossword puzzle.
Oh, so that's bad. Did you finish your crossword puzzle?
I just started it right before this call started. It's a podcast, right? You keep saying you got to go, but I guess you got to go. Thanks for all your great coverage.
He doesn't want to talk to us anymore.
What you were saying last question, you were still walking. I'll talk all day.
That's true.
He's one of our favorite interviews. We have to admit, John Fina, thank you as always for joining us. And we're going to have you back on the podcast again soon.
If he wants, if he's willing.
If he's willing to.
Dare you.
And we'll talk about the Bills Super Bowl chances here in Wildcat Country.
I want to read you a message from Josette, a small business owner in Scottsdale. Josette says, Backcourt Marketing created a social media strategy for all of my gyms. They post engaging content every day and have really brought up the analytics on all of my pages. We meet to go over marketing ideas every month, and I really appreciate their personalized approach. That, in a nutshell, is the kind of return on your investment that you can expect when you trust Backcourt Marketing to fulfill your company's social media needs. This is a company that helps businesses reach their target audience online and build a brand that will crush the competition. They're a dedicated, knowledgeable team of brand advocates, designers, and creative writers who will help take your business to the next level. Make sure to get your business noticed. Call 480-744-6173. That's 480-744-6173. Or email team, TEAM, at backcourtmarketing.com to get started. And remember, Backcourt Marketing is the marketing agency for those who love competition.
Shane, I want to thank our buddy John Fina for joining us in the last segment. And now we are very pleased to be joined by somebody who knows the ins and outs of this rivalry pretty close to what you do, Shane, because he worked in it for many years, and that's Blair Willis. He was in the U of A communications department on the football side for many years, and we appreciate his insight in joining us here for the final segment of Wildcat Country and making picks with us as we go along. Blair, I think my first question is, you obviously covered or worked with the team for many of these Territorial Cup games. What is a memory that stands out to you, kind of a favorite memory from one of your favorite games, and then maybe something that nobody knows in the public eye that you can tell us?
Well, that's interesting question, and thanks for having me, Shane and Eric. It's great to be with you guys. I think for the years that I worked with the team, it's most obvious. You just go to 2014. That was really a magical day at Arizona Stadium for the Wildcats, but it was really just a great college football game too. And what was at stake for the Wildcats, the crowd, the fans. ASU put up a great fight in that game. It came down to the wire. It's hard to overlook that game in terms of what stands out for me in my time with the team. I also, I grew up in Tucson. I was born a Wildcat fan. 1998 also really stands out. I was still a kid back then, but I remember that game. And again, there was a lot at stake for. That was
Trunk's year, right? 98.
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. He set the school rushing record that, later got, Kadeem Carey took that rushing record later on, but that was just a great game in Arizona Stadium. Again, ASU put up a great fight, but it was just the crowds and kind of the buildup to both of those games that, really stand out to me, that all that anticipation. So those are two great Wildcat wins that stand out. The ones that hurt are every time you lose to ASU, obviously. I'm not sure, Eric, if I really have one of those moments that no one knows about, because I think with this rivalry, every story sort of gets out, whether it's something that happens in the locker room or pregame scuffle between the teams. There's been stomping on logos. There's been little, pregame little fights and arguments. And then there's been, personal fouls in the games. There's been great plays. There's been block kicks. There's been missed kicks. There's been, muffed punts. There's been everything in this series. So, as it gets down to the teams in those locker rooms, I'm not sure any story gets overlooked.
Hey, Blair, I just want to ask you, because I'm always curious, because we didn't know in the 2014 game until later on in the game that it was actually for the Pac-12 South Championship. I remember I asked Rich Rodriguez about it, and he said he didn't want to know. Like, he didn't want information to spread. He wanted the team to focus on the game. Did you, I'm sure you kept an eye on the game, but did you get a sense that news kind of spread through the team in the fourth quarter, or did they not really know until the game was over?
Yeah, I think if my recollection's right, the whole focus, as Coach Rodriguez would have said, was, just focus on the task at hand. It doesn't matter, if we lose to ASU, the other results don't matter. So the first and foremost was to win that game. And really for me on a game day working, as an SID, hosting the Territorial Cup is an absolute bear because, you've got all the Tucson media that always covers it, but then the Phoenix market is even larger with all their media.
Right.
So, we don't even have places to put all the media that wants to cover that game. So for me, there was really no other focus for me other than the Territorial Cup, seeing what was taking place on the field, doing my duties. So I wasn't even paying attention to the scoreboard or what was going on elsewhere. I think the instructions to the marketing folks that would run the video board and everything was, don't put the score up until it's known, and don't put it up unless it's something that's going to help Arizona's cause. So I think late in that fourth quarter, they finally got that score up, that result that meant that if Arizona wins the Territorial Cup, they're the Pac-12 South champs. So.
Sorry, I just want to mention the only time I remember the press box at Arizona Stadium shake was after that Scooby sack and Anthony Lopez's touchdown, that very first series for ASU. It just told you what kind of atmosphere it was. And it was awesome. I hope we get that again at Arizona Stadium soon, because when that place is packed, it really is a special place. I want to ask you about one other thing. After the 2017 game, which was Rich Rodriguez's last game, he was in a mood. And he talked about it, and I understand why. And you were on the inside there. Was it largely about, I'm sure he was just pissed about the loss in general, but was it some of it about that penalty, that block in the back, that bogus block in the back penalty that cost Arizona a touchdown late? Or was there something in particular that you happen to know was on his mind?
Well, I think it was just the totality of the situation. Territorial Cup for one. Secondly, I think Arizona came in and dominated the first half of the game. Probably was the better team on the field that day. But then when Khalil Tate maybe gets a little bit banged up and doesn't play in the second half, things completely shifted. And to ASU's credit, they kind of came out throwing the punches there in the second half. If Arizona was going to kind of have a chance to reverse that tide, it was the punt return. You get a tough call that goes against you, end up losing the game. Maybe the funny story that Eric was trying to get out of me earlier, the game's over, we lose, we're going back to the locker room, and one of the locker room doors is locked. It's kind of it was the old visitors locker room that's just been there, since Sun Devil Stadium was built, probably, at least that north end zone area where the visitors have always been. Couldn't get the locker room open to even get the team in there and get the coaches in there. So that kind of upset Coach Rodriguez a little bit, I think. And then have a quick talk with the team. It's a short walk down the hallway. It happens that the officials' locker room is on the way down to where ASU used to have the visiting media area. So I think that reminded him of some things during the game. He had some other just ideas on his mind. I think that some players that maybe didn't participate in that game, he was still a little frustrated that we didn't have. And then, then you got to go in and face the media and answer the questions about losing the Territorial Cup. And, it was a hot moment for Coach. He might regret it a little bit, but really, I think it just all came down to just losing the game. That's how much the game meant to him and really meant to the team.
Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that, because one thing about Coach Rodriguez, and I think Shane and I talked about that years ago, I think when I first met him, was did he ever take rivalry games that seriously? You look at him at West Virginia, his last game there, they lost to Pitt with a chance to go to the national championship on the line. He got skunked by Ohio State, then comes to U of A and loses, in 2012, a game that he should have won, lost in 2013, obviously won in 2014. But, Shane's book only had 2 wins and 4 losses for Rich Rod. So I always questioned whether he cared about the rivalry as much as he should have.
Well, let me jump in on that, Eric, because I talked to Brian Jeffries for Rich Rod versus Graham, and he said that around that third year before the 2014 season, Rich Rodriguez started to use some different language about ASU. Like he started calling them that team up north, which is what is traditionally done, right? You don't like ASU is the school who shall not be named. So I think he sort of, not that so much he took it seriously, but I think he always did. But I think he maybe embraced the traditions a little bit more and embraced that this really is a different kind of feel for it. So I think he got there eventually. I think you saw that in 2014. And it's not like, he went 2-4 in the rivalry, but, Khalil Tate doesn't get hurt. He goes 3-3. So I think it's a little harsh to say he didn't take it seriously. That's just my opinion.
Hey, listen, what I wouldn't give to have him back right now. Go ahead, Blair. I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say, that week, I don't think Coach Rodriguez and that staff, would go out of their way to make the rivalry the importance, every week out of the year. But when it got down to Territorial Cup week, the sole focus in that locker room and meetings, everything, it was on that game. And I think Coach Rodriguez, and I don't know this because I didn't know him that well at the time, but, maybe you go into your first Territorial Cup and you don't really know what it's about. You're kind of an outsider coming from across the country, from West Virginia, Michigan, and coming out here. A lot of people don't necessarily know this rivalry inside and out unless they're from here. I think he got a lesson in that quick and really from every year on, even the years that we lost or didn't play as well. It was that was the focus. And that, when you lose that game, when you're around the team, when you see those players, when you see those coaches, you see their families, there's nothing worse than losing the Territorial Cup. And at the same time, there's nothing better than winning the Territorial Cup.
To me, the worst loss that Arizona's had was not last year. It was in 2010 with the blocked extra points. That one I've never been more sad leaving a stadium than I was that night.
Can I tell you, Eric, that I remember being in the opposite end zone for that game. And I remember when Arizona scored. And by the way, if Arizona won that game and the PAT was good, that would have been Nick Foles' defining drive. He would have been remembered because that was a fantastic textbook game-winning 2-minute drill by Nick Foles. Yeah. But everyone was cheering, high-fiving when the touchdown. And I'm like, I'm going to wait to see that PAT goes in because, Alex and Dejas was struggling and weird things happened in this rivalry. So I was one of the few who was like, I was disappointed, but I wasn't shocked that PAT didn't go in. And then, of course, the rest is history.
Shane, is there a precedent in this rivalry that you can think of off the top of your head of a 1-win team beating a 7-win team? Where or would this win be completely out of the blue as far as this rivalry goes?
Oh boy, going back to 2004, I don't have it in front of me, but I know Arizona had just 2 wins going into that game. It was an 11-game schedule at the time. Arizona was 2-8. I want to say ASU was 8-2. So the gap in terms of wins was the same. If I'm right, if I'm remembering it right, because ASU was ranked 18th in the country. I think they were 8-2. So you have an 8-win team versus a 2-win team. Same math, 8 - 2, 7 - 1. It's the same win gap if that's what you want to talk about.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, go ahead, Blair.
And there were, there's a couple similarities to that season in terms of, well, one, Arizona this year did not beat NAU early in the year, which it should have been a victory, but I'm not sure any of us can explain how that one didn't at least come out on the Wildcat side. Yeah. But you put that aside, Arizona won its homecoming game this year. Back in 2004, Arizona also pulled off kind of a early November homecoming victory that was a little bit of a surprise. And then you go a few weeks later, and it was the Territorial Cup, and Arizona won that, and just kind of created a little bit of excitement going into the following years for Coach Stoops and his staff. So,
and it was also Mike Stoops' first season, Jed Fish's first season. So
let us hope. And a great insight from both of you. All right, now it's time to make some picks, and these picks this week, as always, are presented by Backcourt Marketing, our sponsor. We always appreciate what they do here on Wildcat Country. Check them out at backcourtmarketing.com. They are now on Twitter at backcourtmktg. So they'll provide us some creative tweets to use as we go along here in basketball season, which is going to be a lot of fun. But guys, we have 11 games to pick this week. We're going to start with the Egg Bowl, battle of ranked teams, Ole Miss at Mississippi State. Blair, who you got?
Well, this is always one of my favorite games, and it only got better a couple of years ago when Coach Rodriguez was down there, and there was the whole
Old Piss
urinating incident.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So I'll be watching this one closely. It's always been fun to watch. I think Ole Miss will win on the road. I think they're just a little bit better team overall, but I think it's going to be fun to watch.
Eric, I'm feeling bold this week, and I really wanted to go with Mississippi State, but then I remembered Mike Leach's horrible track record in the Apple Cup. So I'd like to see the upset, but I think Lane Kiffin's guys get the W.
Shane, this is one of the most fascinating coaching matchups in the country. I mean, you got Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach. Got to wonder how long each one of them is going to stay in the state of Mississippi. But I'm going to go with the home team, despite that rivalry factor. Just gave me a little bit of pause with Mike Leach. I'm going to take him to win this game at home. Both teams pretty good, but the team with the better defense wins this one, and Mississippi State in a close one. Alabama at Auburn. I mean, Auburn has gone into a spiral right now without Bo Nix. I think we all can agree Alabama big. Blair, Shane, is there anything that you guys would differ here in the Iron Bowl?
No, I mean, this Alabama team isn't as good as the Nick Saban teams we're accustomed to, but I can't see Auburn without Bo Nix having much of a chance. So I'll go with Bama on the road before they get stomped by Georgia in the SEC championship game.
And I'll just add to that. I mean, like Shane said, this Alabama team might not be as dominant as we've seen. I still think they're a very good team, especially offensively. If they're going to flip a switch, it needs to be this week in the rivalry game, because you're not going to just show up against Georgia next week and flip that switch. So I think if Alabama's going to do anything in that SEC title game, that momentum's got to kind of start this week in the rivalry game. If they can get some momentum, maybe put a little bit of a scare into Georgia, could make next week a little more interesting.
All right, well, here we go. Alabama, Auburn, the Iron Bowl, always a fun one, but, kind of loses a little bit of luster this week without Bo Nix and Auburn not playing as well. A great game. What is this one called? You got to help me here. The Bedlam. Okay.
Yep.
Oklahoma at Oklahoma State. This is a game that shakes up the Big 12. Oklahoma kind of been struggling of late, even though they held on against Iowa State. Oklahoma State has a really outside chance. Actually, they have a legitimate chance if they win the next 2 weeks of making the college football playoff. Blair, who you got in this one? And do you think that the winner has a legitimate chance of getting in that Final Four?
The Final Four is a tough one to kind of guesstimate. I think there's a few other games that are going to matter around that. I will say I've been very impressed with Oklahoma State's defense this year. When you look at Oklahoma State and Baylor, it's kind of flipped the how we think of the Big 12. Two teams that are winning a lot of games this year with defense. Now, can they keep Oklahoma, which is winning still, even though they're not maybe as prolific offensively as they have been in previous years, still a pretty good offensive unit. I'm going to say that Oklahoma State's defense is going to be good enough to give Oklahoma's offense some more troubles. And I think the Cowboys may pull out sort of a rare win in this rivalry. Oklahoma's been pretty good in this rivalry game, but I like Oklahoma State this year.
I think Oklahoma State is the best team in the Big 12, followed by Baylor and Oklahoma at number 3 at this point. The Cowboys defense, like Blair said, has been playing lights out. They're going to be at home. I think they're going to cruise the Big 12 championship game, and I'm going to make the bold prediction right now, Eric. Oklahoma State will be in the college football playoff.
Whoa, there it is. Shane with the first bold statement of the day. I appreciate that. You didn't let me get my one in for later on. All right, Ohio State at Michigan. Guys, I mean, Ohio State dominates this rivalry. Jim Harbaugh, was he 0-5, 0-6 in this game? And there's no reason to think it's going to be any different this year. I think Ohio State wins by multiple touchdowns. Shane, am I on the right track or off base?
Probably. I'd love to see Harbaugh and Michigan get over the hump, but CJ Stroud and that Ohio State offense has just been unstoppable. I don't know how Michigan hangs with them for 4 quarters. So I like the Buckeyes. I like Michigan fans to be upset that Harbaugh has done just enough again to stick around for at least another season.
He's had a great year. Don't get me wrong. Fiesta Bowl definitely in play for Michigan.
Yeah, from my perspective, guys, I think college football is better if this rivalry is more competitive. I would love to see Michigan make this a fight. I think it would, make the playoff discussion even a little bit more interesting if Michigan can make this a close game and also maybe even pull out a victory. I haven't seen enough from Harbaugh to think he's going to make some adjustments in this game and throw a few wrinkles at Ohio State that they're not expecting. So I think even though it might be close for 2 quarters, maybe 3 quarters, I think Ohio State's just got too much playmaking ability on offense and they'll pull away.
The rare 7-game week in the Pac-12, because we've got some non-rivalry games, which is stupid. Shane and I talked about that last week, Blair. It's really ridiculous. But let's go to a couple rivalry games to start. Colorado at Utah. I don't think there's much to really discuss here. Utes really impressive outside of the trip to Tucson a few weeks ago. Utes win this one big, even though the Buffs are coming off a rare win.
Yeah, they came off a rare win, but their offense was still, really bad. I just don't see Colorado being able to put up much of a fight in this one. Utah just needs to stay healthy. Don't get too much off what they've been doing and try to re-gear up for a potential rematch against Oregon or whoever comes out of the North in the championship game.
Yeah, and this is kind of a weird rivalry, quote unquote. I mean, it's kind of been thrown together. Utah BYU is really more of a rivalry, but I think this game might actually be closer than you might think, simply because Utah is still riding high from the emotions of last week's win, so maybe a little bit of a letdown. But I don't think Colorado has enough firepower on offense to keep up with the Utes for 4 quarters.
In the Apple Cup, Washington State's played pretty darn well since Nick Rolovich was dismissed. Washington has not played well all season. So much for my preseason Pac-12 champions pick. That was brutal. I believe the Cougs have lost 7 in a row in this series, something like that. Will they get off the hook this weekend, Shane?
Washington State's the better team. And it's a game you keep an eye on, because if Washington wins, then Oregon State could be in the Pac-12 championship game. They would be if they beat Oregon. I know Cougar fans are sick of losing to the Huskies. They've lost 7 in a row, like you said. I think the Huskies are going to make it 8. It's been a disappointing season, to say the least, but like we often see in rivalry games, I think the Huskies might see this as a way to salvage their season, put it together for 4 quarters. They're going to be at home. I think they beat Washington State.
Blair?
I think Shane's, pick there is interesting. I don't think Washington's going to win this game. I do think they're going to keep this thing close. Washington State may have some Pac-12 title implications on the line, so might be a little bit tight, might be a little bit tentative early. I think Washington's got nothing to lose. I think they're going to throw the kitchen sink. They don't really have much on offense, but they're going to throw everything they have at them. One big play here or there, you never know. So I think it's a close game, but I still think Washington State's the better team and will finally snap that streak in this rivalry.
In one of these rare unrivalry games, Notre Dame at Stanford. I guess it's kind of a rivalry. They play at the farm every other year. Stanford has not won a game since they beat Oregon on October 3rd. David Shaw, you got to wonder, is his time in Palo Alto? Does he want to start looking elsewhere? One of the best coaches in college football, but doesn't have much to work with this year. Guys, I think we can agree Notre Dame's going to win this game. Anybody disagree with that thought?
No, it seems like years ago that Stanford upset Oregon, because I firmly believe at this moment Stanford is the worst team in the Pac-12. I would put Arizona ahead of them.
Wow.
No way they beat Notre Dame. And the Irish can do a little backdoor slide in the college football playoffs if things fall a certain way. I don't think they will, but I think Notre Dame rolls this week.
Blair, Notre Dame big? Are we agreeing here?
Yeah, too much on the line for Notre Dame. They could backdoor their way into the playoff. And Stanford, they just can't put up enough of a fight. This is big.
USC has won 1 home game since September, and it was against Arizona. I don't think that's saying much. Now they host BYU in a kind of another game where BYU is a part of the Pac-12 South. I'm taking the Cougs to win on the road. I just haven't seen enough from USC. It's really weird to say that, but I'll take BYU in a kind of I know they're favored, but it seems like kind of an upset nonetheless. Shane, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think the Cougars roll. USC is in full disarray. They played especially bad at home for some reason. Tyler Algier is one of the best running backs in the country. We saw that in the game against Arizona. I think he has another big game. I think BYU wins.
Blair?
I think BYU wins. It could be fun for a little while because USC still does have some playmakers offensively. They can figure out the quarterback position a little bit. But I think BYU's too tough. They're too physical. They'll actually wear down USC at home.
Cal is starting to play better now that they have a full roster outside of their trip to Tucson. They demolished Stanford last week. UCLA, talk about demolishing, dropping 62 in the Coliseum, was really impressive. I like the Bruins at home in this non-rivalry game. Blair, thoughts on this one?
I'm going to go the other way. I'm actually going to take Cal in this one. I think when they've got their full roster and they're a little bit healthier, they're a pretty feisty team. I think UCLA, very emotional win for them last week. They might still be riding, their coattails a little bit from what last Saturday looked like. I think Cal could catch them here, just trying to get a little bit of redemption to their season here late.
Wow. Shane, thoughts?
Yeah, I kind of want to pick Cal as well. I kind of thinking the same way Blair is, but here's my logic. I picked so many road teams already. I just can't pick another one. So I think UCLA caps what would have to be considered a reasonably successful season if they win. I think they squeak out a victory.
And Shane, by the way, I was 9-1 last week. You were 8-2. I gained a game. I'm still 3 back and probably not going to gain enough ground this weekend unless you make some crazy picks in these last 2. The rivalry formerly known as the Civil War, Oregon State at Oregon. Well, I'm saying it here on Wildcat Country. Oregon State at Oregon. If the Beavs win and get a Washington State win, I believe, as you said, they're in the Pac-12 championship game. I just don't see Oregon losing 2 in a row. Give me the Ducks big. Sorry, Oregon State, but it's true. You're not good on the road. Blair, your thoughts?
obviously, we found out why last week. They're not as complete of a team as you need to be to compete for a playoff berth. But I do think they'll bounce back. I think the only thing worse for them than missing out on the playoff is probably losing to Oregon State. So they can put a little bit of a damper on the progress the Beavers have made this year. I think they've got enough playmaking ability on both sides of the ball to give Oregon State enough troubles. This one will be good. It'll be exciting, but I'm still taking the Ducks.
Yeah, if this game was in Corvallis, where Oregon State is 6-0 this season, and where they beat Oregon last year, I'd probably roll with the Beavers. But Oregon's the better team. They're at home. There's still a Pac-12 title on the line. I'm sure they're going to be steaming after last weekend's embarrassment. I mean, they weren't just beat; they were embarrassed by Utah. So I'm going to go with the Ducks.
And finally, it is the Territorial Cup, a game that finally ends Arizona's season. And I think at this point, we all can agree after watching 12 games of Arizona football, or 11 to this point, it's probably time for it to be over. And we'll, look forward to the offseason and, some of the players coming in and obviously a new defensive coordinator. And let's just hope they play with some fight this weekend. All right, Blair, give me a thought on the game and a score prediction, if you would.
Okay. This game is really a tough matchup, I think, for Arizona. ASU, a team that can run the ball pretty well. All the man coverage and pressures that Arizona's defense likes to put on quarterbacks. Jaden Daniels is a great counter to that with his legs. So I think it's a difficult mismatch. I'm going to be interested to see what the Arizona defense does this week for two reasons. One, what I just mentioned, but also how they're responding to Don Brown leaving in his last game. I'm curious to know if Don Brown might have a couple wrinkles up his sleeve to maybe change the looks up front that they give ASU, maybe try to create some confusion for the offensive line and for Jaden Daniels, some things that we haven't seen in the other 11 games. Because the reason I say that is we've been building all year to kind of the future of the Arizona defense under Don Brown. Now that he's leaving, this is kind of, an opportunity for him to put a stamp on things, but it's not necessarily his program and his scheme that he's going to be continuing to build on. So, I don't know how many tricks he has up his sleeve, but I think we might see some things, whether it's personnel, alignment, the fronts. I think something could be a little bit different, and that's what Arizona needs to try to make this competitive, because if Arizona can't do that, I just don't know if they can score enough on this ASU defense. It's going to take stealing a possession, whether that's a defensive score, a special team score, another block kick, something like that. Arizona's going to need to flip a possession or two, at least to keep this thing close. If I have to go with a score, I think even in a pretty hard-fought game, this is something like ASU 31, Arizona 17, somewhere in there.
Okay, great analysis, and we appreciate having you on Wildcat Country. That was awesome, and we hope to have you on again here soon. Shane, all right, let's get your pick for the big game. You know this rivalry better than just about anybody. Let's hear what you got.
Now, it doesn't mean I pick it better than everybody, but look, I agree with everything, every single thing that Blair said. I think losing Jerry Roberts is going to be tough for Arizona as well. Look, I think Arizona is going to be the more emotionally charged team coming in for a number of reasons. I think they might even be the more focused team. ASU is the better team. ASU, and that doesn't always mean everything in this rivalry, but the gap is just that big. I think ASU could take the first half off, maybe get smacked in the mouth a couple times, and probably come back to win. Like I said, Jaden Daniels seems a little lax out there for whatever reason. Maybe I'm just reading more into that than I should, but I think Arizona, the intensity is going to be there. It's not going to be 70-7, but I can't pick ASU or I can't pick against ASU. They haven't lost at home in this rivalry since 2011. I'm going to go ASU 34, Arizona 24.
All right. And finally, my prediction here, I think if I'm going to make one thing that I'm confident about, it's what I said in the first game of the year, Shane. I said, all I want to see against BYU was Arizona to be in a one possession game going into the fourth quarter. And that happened. And that's all I'm going to ask for this game. I'm not going to get greedy and ask for a win. Of course, we all want one, but I want to see this be a one possession game going into the fourth quarter. And I believe that it will be. And I think ASU, puts it on them a little bit in the fourth quarter, but I'm going to go with kind of a hybrid score from what you guys said. ASU 34, Arizona 20. I think the 20.5 points that Arizona is getting in this game from the odds makers are just too much to ask. If you're even ASU fans I've talked to this week don't think they're going to cover 3 touchdowns. And Jed Fish said something that was interesting. He brought up the fact that ASU passed the ball up 63-7 last year and said that, payback was coming. I appreciate that, Coach. Let's hope you actually take this rivalry as seriously as we think you will and play well. I want to thank our guests, Blair Willis, of course, John Fina for joining us. our sponsor, Backcourt Marketing. Check them out, backcourtmarketing.com, and our friends at All AZ Sports, as always. For Shane Dale, I'm Eric Cohen. Happy Thanksgiving, and most importantly this week, as always, bear down.